Hey readers, welcome back to another video. My name is Paloma, and today's video is going to be my review on The Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett. So before we get started with the review, I do want to let you guys know that there will be mentions of rape and sexual assault. I won't be too graphic with it, it will just be brief mentions as it pertains to the story. So the inner flap calls it a spellbinding epic tale of ambition, anarchy, and absolute power set against the sprawling medieval canvas of 12th century England. This is Ken Follett's historical masterpiece. And I have to agree, I do think this is a masterpiece of a book. I think the writing is really rich, and I think the world building that Ken Follett crafted within this fictional town of Kingsbridge, I think it was really well done. I did think that the story was going to be about the building of the cathedral and kind of like the inner workings of like a mason working on there, as well as what it takes to build a cathedral, what it means to build a cathedral, and those are actual plots in the book. It just isn't the main focus. So another reason why I picked up this book was actually it's in my mom's library. We were cleaning out the house and I found this and I looked at the cover and I was like, wow, this is a really beautiful cover. I wonder what this book is about. And she told me she loved it, and so I was like, well, I might as well try it, because I do like to challenge myself and read books over 500 pages, and so this was the perfect opportunity to do another book over that page limit and see what it was all about. What was really interesting about the book was actually the prologue of the book. I think that was what kept me interested in the first place. It starts off with a mystery of why a certain character is, being hanged. And that was what really drew me in. Other than the cathedral, I kind of wanted to figure out what was the mystery and why was he being hanged. Did he actually commit the crime that they're not willing to tell us what was, or things like that. And his wife curses everybody by beheading a chicken and letting its blood spurt everywhere. I mean, it's really graphic and it's actually really memorable. So that was something that I also liked about the book as well. That storyline kind of takes a back seat and you kind of wonder, is it ever going to get brought up again? But Ken Follett did a really great job of weaving it throughout everybody else's storylines so that it actually all comes together towards the end of the book, and then we kind of realize what actually happened to the character who got hanged in the prologue, and how that actually has a ripple effect for all the characters involved. Another thing I liked about the book was how well researched it was. I personally don't have a lot of information on the medieval era. I don't really read a lot of medieval fiction books and or fantasy, so I can't really comment on how accurate it is, but he does a great job at writing the historical facts that maybe are actually true, that you kind of think to yourself, you're like, okay, maybe that did happen during that time period. I personally won't know. I don't think I'll ever research into it, but it is a nice little tidbit that he put in there to just make it more realistic and more grounding. There were a few moments where I was really taken aback and I actually wanted to DNF the book because sometimes it was a little too graphic. One of the issues that I had with the book was the rape and sexual assault scenes. Typically, when you read historical fiction, especially so far back, you try to turn off the modern lens that you have and try to absorb the book as it is. I did my very best to do that, but there were some scenes where I was like, this is really ridiculous. I don't think this is necessary at all to the plot of the story. And even one of the characters, she even said in her own mind she doesn't understand why the sexual assault scene is even happening to her, because the man who was sexually assaulting her had never shown any inclination that he really wanted to do that to her, other than to prove a point to another character that he could do it. So I personally didn't like that. I think it was a bit overdone, and it honestly could have been left out of the final edit of the book, and the book still would have been really good. I don't want to reveal too much. I want it to be kind of like a spoiler-free review. I want to say some of the things that happened in here because I honestly couldn't believe it. Another thing that Ken Follett did that I really liked was that he didn't make any good character, whereas in their completely good, they have no faults or anything like that. Every character, even the ones that we were rooting for, had their own faults and also did things that arguably were not good. There's a female character who I really enjoyed watching her story arc. She has things happen to her and it alters her mind and her ability to really move through the world as other girls probably would have. She has some actions where I kind of was doing like a little side eye and I was like, girl, what is happening here? What are you doing? This is not really you. But that's the nature of having, you know, a layered character who's almost a little bit unpredictable, but you can kind of see, you know, the path that she's trying to go towards. There is a character in here that I absolutely despise, and I'm going to spoil it for everybody. His name is William Hamley. If you've read the book, then you know. If you have not read the book, I think he's one of the worst villains that have ever been put out there. Which means he does his job very well, because I actively was preying on his downfall with every page that was where he was mentioned. I thought he should have died earlier than he had, and I think he should have went out in a more brutal way. I don't really care that it went in the other character's favor, but he was the worst. There's another character, his name is Jack Jackson. I liked his storyline. There were a few times where I thought he was really annoying, but he was also probably like a teenager, young adult when he's kind of introduced to us. I think he's a teenager. He's around a teenager, so obviously he's a teenage boy and he's kind of annoying. And then I was kind of like, is he gonna actually grow up into an adult, or is he kind of gonna have that childlike way about him like another character does that's in a close circumference to him? And thankfully he didn't. Along the way, throughout the entirety of building this cathedral, he grew up and he experienced things. He got to travel to like other parts of Europe and kind of find himself, as well as find what it means to build this cathedral and really help it out. So I enjoyed that. I'm very thankful he did not remain annoying throughout the entirety of the book. I'm glad somebody grew up. Different from what I'm kind of used to, which is why I think medieval and fantasy literature is probably so popular, because you have those multi-layered characters because they're doing such violent actions, but there's almost a justification for it depending on like the time period and the plot of the story. So to make this a real review, would I recommend this book? I would recommend this book if you're into medieval or fantasy literature. This is really outside of my wheelhouse. I typically don't, I sound like a broken record by saying that this is something I wouldn't have really picked up on my own unless I had found it. And so if you are looking to step outside of your comfort zone and read kind of medieval literature, I think this would be a really good place to start. All in all, I give the book 4 stars. I think the writing is rich. I think the world building is really well done. It's well researched, and I personally enjoyed a few characters, and I hated one character to the point of extreme, and I think that's what makes a good book. Would I pick this book up again? I personally don't think so. Just because I know it's so outside of my wheelhouse, I don't think it's necessary for me to pick it up again. Maybe in a couple years I'll come back to it and maybe change my mind, but for now this is kind of the end point with me and the Kingsbridge book. I don't personally think I'm going to read the rest of the series, but if you guys say it's good, maybe I'll check it out. So that's my review of Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett. I hope you enjoyed this video and hope to see you in the next one. Bye!